Hey, what's going on, folks? It's Larry at Packmasters Dog Training. Haven't done many of these car things in a while. Didn't think I was going to do them anymore, but after attending the IACP conference in Colorado Springs, apparently that's not what people want. So this may go on a little while. I'm going to talk about a few things that people had tons of questions about, and apparently people want a lot more information about it. So I'm going to do my best to get out there, but it is information that I think will help a lot of people, maybe help clear up a few things. Some of those subjects are when people hear me talk about helping aggressive dogs or fearful dogs or dogs with high anxiety, when they hear me talk about positive confusion. Okay, we touched on it at the conference a lot, and people were really intrigued and blown away and confused all at the same time. The use of e-collars with aggressive dogs and fearful dogs, the use of clickers and marking and rewarding unwanted behaviors. All these things we talked about in length with tons of people over the past week, and it was really eye-opening to me. For one of the most incredible things about the past week is how many really determined and hungry young trainers there are out there, which is a beautiful thing. That really blew my mind. You know, I was a presenter at the IACP this year, and I was pretty nervous and pretty scared. You know, you got 550 roughly, professional dog trainers from all over the world. So it's a pretty stressful thing to get up there and speak in front of people. And I did things a little differently. I didn't go in with a planned agenda or a specific subject I wanted to talk about. I allowed the people in the audience dictate what they wanted to talk about. And it was really eye-opening. It was really eye-opening how much further we have to go to get the information out there, Tons of high moments from this week. But one of the things that kept coming up is the use of e-collars and, aggressive and fearful and anxious dogs. And there's a lot of people out there that don't know where to start, or there's still a lot of confusion, okay? So let me talk about the main subject here, really kind of what so many people had questions about. When they hear me talk about positive confusion, it's really not a real thing. You're not going to find it in a dog training or science book. It's something that I labeled the use of e-collars and clickers with fearful and aggressive dogs. And I've been doing it for a very long time, okay? So what do I mean when I talk about that? I'm going to use very specific examples, some that many of you may have seen, so it opens up your eyes a little bit, makes things a little more clear, okay? Positive confusion. So if you go back to one of my first videos, I don't know how, 8, 9, 10 years ago, I don't know what it was. It was a very human aggressive dog, all right? Very human aggressive dog. Had to be muzzled. I couldn't go about my normal training because, he just wasn't safe to work with, and he wasn't going to let you really handle him. So every time, you would attempt to handle this dog, he would try to attack. That's what he did to keep people away. That's what a lot of dogs do, right? So in that video, I utilized the e-collar. So it's not something that I just started doing. I've been doing this for years. Many people in that video wanted to know how was I using the e-collar, and most assumed that when the dog would blow up and try to attack me, I would punish the behavior with the e-collar, which, as many know that know me, I don't do that. I don't punish the aggression, especially with an e-collar. I just don't do that. So what I did, the way I utilized the e-collar with that dog was, the last thing that dog wanted to do was to come near me. If he came near me, he felt like he had to attack, right? I can't go about the normal conditioning with the dog. I can't use food. I can't do any of that. So I have to do something a little different. So we always talk about how when we're teaching a dog something, we don't want there to be any confusion. We want to make it very clear when we're teaching. And that's true. If we're teaching a behavior, our goal should be to make it as clear as possible to the dog. We don't want any confusion. But when we're dealing with problem dogs, that confusion can be very beneficial to us. Let me explain to you how. If you take any dog and you give him a little nudge with the leash, or you bump him with your leg or your hand, you use spatial pressure, all these things are things that the dog understands, okay? That's how they operate in their world. But when you put an e-collar on a dog, and I'm talking at the lowest levels, okay, just like we train all dogs, we find the dog's lowest level perceived till they barely feel something. It's not even uncomfortable. They just not even sure if it's there, but it's there, okay? They don't know what that is. It's completely foreign to a dog, completely foreign. We can use that to our benefit. So what I did with that dog specifically is when he was at the end of the leash, I utilized the e-collar, holding down the continuous button at the lowest level that dog felt. That was single digits on the e-collar. I believe it was a dog trip back then, okay? Very, very low, could barely feel it. But when he feels that stimulation, that very strange foreign sensation, he has no idea what that is. That creates some confusion. That confusion benefits us in this example because while that dog is confused, thinking about what he's feeling, he can no longer be scared, anxious, or aggressive, okay? We totally changed the mindset off of having fear and wanting to attack me to wondering, what is that, okay? Total confusion. Now, what happens is, while he's feeling that very strange stimulation, I apply very, very light leash pressure, straight line leash pressure, just enough to help the dog. Like, if you're watching, most people won't realize we're doing anything. And what happens is, when that dog gives in to the leash pressure and takes one step forward, we release the stimulation from the e-collar, okay? Now, that's the first positive thing that happens with the dog. For the first time, in many cases, the dog was just able to better his situation, even though he doesn't know what's going on, okay? Now, normally with most dogs, once we do that, then we follow with a food reward, making it even better. With this dog, we could not. We couldn't do that. So instead of following up with a food reward, that dog's next positive thing that happened was once he was next to me, nothing bad happened. That's what they expect to happen. That's why they become so savage-like aggressive to keep you away. Because in their mind, they believe once you're near them, something bad's going to happen. And that's where the aggression comes from, to keep you away or have the owners remove them from the situation. That's how they win, okay? But in this case, when that e-collar gets turned off, as the dog comes closer to you and nothing bad happens, that's a big win for the dog. Okay, so that's what I talk about when I talk about positive confusion. So that dog was never corrected or punished with the e-collar. That e-collar, that strange foreign sensation, became a way for the dog to win and better his situation very, very fast. Very, very empowering to dogs. And I've been using e-collars on really fearful dogs and aggressive dogs for a lot of years, many, many years, for a very long time. And when I first started and saw how successful it could be, I couldn't quite understand why. I didn't have an explanation. I just knew that it did. But as time went on and you get better at what you do and you learn more, it makes a lot of sense. You totally understand why, especially with the fearful dogs, okay? So that's one example. Let's use a more current example. I talked about this at the conference, okay? Me and my buddy Duke Ferguson just did a seminar over in Scotland. A trainer flew all the way to Scotland with a dog from New York. He acquired this dog from Thailand, I guess in the meat market trade over there. So this dog was as shut down and scared as could be, right? This dog was in really bad shape. The first day, we're out on a pack walk out in the mountains, and I saw it firsthand when two dogs approached this dog, and that dog just fell into the fetal position and was screaming its head off like it was being tortured. This dog really was in bad shape, okay? This trainer was definitely wasn't exaggerating. So the very first day of our workshop, my buddy Duke takes the dog, and he starts clicker training. Clicker and food. Did a beautiful job with the dog. Did a really great job. Because you see, good trainers never just utilize one method, one technique, one tool to fix problems, guys. Great trainers use everything available to them. And in this case, the first thing Duke did was take the clicker and food and start building this dog up. And he did a beautiful job. The dog came to life, right? Now, it was the very next day that this owner, who's also a trainer, insisted that I do some e-collar work with the dog, to which a lot of people were like, there's no way. Why would you put an e-collar on this dog? it's so shut down and so scared and did great with the clicker and everything, but you can't put an e-collar on this dog. This is very wrong. This is a total myth. And I said, yeah, of course, let's do it. And I said, I can guarantee you the dog won't get worse. I don't know how much will help the dog, but let's see. I think it'll come around, but I can guarantee that it won't get worse because of the way I use it. What I have found over traveling abroad and doing this conference, unfortunately, there's still so many people out there, folks, that think the e-collar is used to punish and correct only. That's it. And we're not doing a good enough job on educating the masses. We have to do better about that. We have to. So I take this dog, and for the first couple minutes, I just use some marker training. I think it was just a verbal marker and some food. And at first, the dog wouldn't take any food, but then we switched to a more high-value reward, and the dog started taking it. So after a couple of minutes, I go ahead and put the e-collar on the dog and find the dog's lowest working level. That's what we want. Always the lowest level the dog perceives, barely feels it, right? And I don't believe I used any commands at first. So what I did was I implemented the continuous button, holding it down, and then again, providing very light straight line pressure to the dog. The second the dog stepped my way, I marked it and rewarded with a high value treat. As shut down and scared of the world that this dog was, guess what happens? It came to life. Tail is up, tail is wagging, and it looked beautiful. Because again, this dog only knows mental pain. And I'm sure plenty of physical pain also, but it's never experienced a way to win. So again, when we introduce this very unknown foreign stimulation, the e-collar, right? The dog is allowed to better its situation. It's confused. It feels that e-collar, totally confused. And by helping and guiding it a little bit towards us, that confusion goes away. And it's rewarded big time. That's why I call it positive confusion. It's not a real thing. I made it up. And there will be people that tear this apart, but those people tear everything apart. And what I found after talking to so many people this past week, we don't give a damn about those people. We'll never stop putting out stuff because of those that don't have a life and are very lonely and very angry and actually spend time watching other people's videos to criticize. Those people, they're not important, and you got to feel sorry for them. They just don't have much. They don't have much, so they use other people's stuff, and that's a sad thing. And unfortunately, it doesn't help the industry, So that positive confusion is really, really, really effective, and it's not something that works now and then. It's something I've been doing for years, and I've shown a lot of it. Now, here's the thing that really blows people's mind, and a lot of people disagree with it. But I saw a few other people that spoke about it at the conference, and I thought it was fantastic, I also talked about, I made a post right before I went to the conference about using spatial pressure and claiming space, how effective it is with creating those dogs that you want. Really, really important, But I also talked about claiming space and moving dogs around, while they're behaving, not just waiting for the dogs to misbehave. That's very, very powerful. But the one thing that got people jumping was I talked about when you're dealing with a dog with reactivity or aggression, whatever, and it's gone through the training and, it's along the process. If that dog starts staring at another dog and the unwanted behavior, the reactivity, the aggression is coming. Now, most people understand to jump in and interrupt that behavior, right, before it blows. That's common sense. And we do that, and we encourage that. But I also mark it and reward it, okay? That's the part where people's head explodes. Like, why would you reward bad behavior, unwanted behavior? And then, a lot of people say, shouldn't you interrupt and correct that behavior? Yes, absolutely, we should. But I never do things one way. Okay? Now, will interrupting and correcting that behavior when the dog first becomes fixated help? Absolutely. Absolutely. Will it change the dog's mindset completely? Most likely not. One thing is rarely enough. So what I also like to do, I always like to do the opposite, guys. And that's something I learned from my mentor a long time ago. Always train the opposite behavior. If you train the dog to come to you, train it to go away from you. But that also works in behavioral terms too, like we're talking about, right? So what I also like to do is when you first see that dog, notice the stressor right before the bad behavior comes, but the dog's mind is already there. You want to make sure the dog is marker trained, clicker or verbal marker. I prefer clickers in this sense. And I will click that thought process. The dog knows the clicker, so they're almost always going to look at you right away, and that's where the food reward comes from. Again, totally confusing to the dog, right? Positive confusion. That dog's doing something you don't like, you mark it and reward. What kind of bullshit is that? A lot of people are thinking, right? The macho dudes with the little wieners. They got to punish that. Hit the dog over the head. Light it up with the e-collar. Whack it with the prong collar. Very ineffective. Very ineffective. I don't care what anyone says. I've shown more than most. You never see those folks showing the work, right? You have to change the dog's mindset. So now when you click and reward that thought process, after several repetitions, sometimes after not too many repetitions, now when the dog notices that other dog coming or the person or whatever stresses it out, now the dog starts getting in the mindset that when he sees that stressor, he's waiting for the reward, starts looking at you immediately. And then you can continue to mark and reward that behavior, okay? Extremely effective, and guys, I've done this for years. And people think you're crazy, but I've also trained dogs that bark out of control. I've also marked that and rewarded that and taught them how to bark. Because when you put something on command, when you teach a dog how to do something, it's that much easier to stop it, guys. The one thing that I was pleasantly surprised to hear is I sat in on J-Jack's presentation at the IACP conference, and he talked about the same thing. And man, I was so happy to hear I'm not the only lunatic out there, you know. And I heard people talking in this like, why would you do that? Aren't you marking and rewarding the bad behavior? But I was really, and it's one thing I respect so much about Jay, because, you know, there's no doubt about it. He's a real smart guy. But again, the one thing we have in common, the well-being of the animal comes first. You know, and he don't give a shit about the common trends, what people do and say. I mean, shit, he did a presentation on flexi leads. That takes big balls. So hats off to you, Jay. Another one that I saw speak, Dr. Ian Dunbar was a presenter. You're going to get mixed reviews from the balanced community about Ian Dunbar, but it is what it is. I agree with a lot of what he says. I don't agree with everything, but I agree with a lot. And he mentioned the same thing too. And listen, guys, I don't care what kind of trainer you are. If something works, it works. Grisha Stewart, very big in the purely positive community, right? She was a presenter. She presented on BAT, behavior adjustment training. Gets a lot of grief on that method from the balanced trainer side. But what I said during her presentation, I raised my hand and I said, for the people who are doubting, this is something that I do with behavioral problems, aggression cases, human aggression, dog aggression. It is one of the things that I do. Is that the only thing? No, it's not. But it is part of my program because I do a lot of things. I use BAT. I use CAT. I use clickers. CAT is constructional aggression treatment. Okay, very effective. When combined with BAT, even more effective. I use clickers. I use e-collars. So when people say, how do you turn these dogs around, where they're not just exhibiting the behavior, but they're happy. There's not a lot of stress there. Well, I don't do one thing, guys. I do a lot of things. And a lot of those things are big in the purely positive community, and a lot of them aren't. The one thing that made me feel great is that Grisha Stewart, again, very big in the purely positive community, sat in on my presentation and had some really nice things to say, very positive things, because apparently she didn't know that a lot of us use tools the way we do, because unfortunately a lot of the popular people out there make us all look bad. But the beautiful thing, over the last few months, more and more eyes are getting open, and more young trainers and older trainers are seeing that this constant punishment talk comes from people that don't know anything else, right? And so it's our job to keep the movement going. You know, the way I see it is there's 4 groups of trainers. You have the purely positive trainers on the far left, the radicals, that don't care much about anything except taking our tools away. That's their main mission. Then you have the purely positive trainers that truly do care about the animals, and they just don't believe in using tools or punishment. So be it. I have no problem with that. Everyone's free to do what they want. There's nothing malicious about their agenda. Then you have the so-called balanced trainers. I hate that term. That's where I fall. I consider myself a versatile trainer. I consider myself a purely positive balanced trainer bursting with versatility. It says so on my website. There's a story behind that. Where again, I utilize all tools, but the well-being of the animal comes first. Plain and simple. I've never been accused of being heavy-handed on an animal. 20-something years, I've never had a complaint from a client. Never. And I don't think I ever will, because it's important to me. And then you have on the far right side the so-called balanced trainers that make us all look bad, where every other word that comes out of their mouth is punishment. They're the ones that will turn the e-collar up to 100 and hold it down for 3 seconds to stop a behavior on day one, no training. They're the ones that promote, just put the prong collar on the dog and fix it, yank it, do what you got to do, hit the dog, do whatever you got to do. See, if the two groups in the middle, the honest, purely positive trainers and the honest, balanced trainers, just completely ignore the ones on the far left and the far right, just stop paying attention to them, they have no choice but to go away. And at the same time, if we all keep putting out information and showing what we do, it makes it a lot harder for them to get their agenda across. So very, very important, So positive confusion, e-collars, clickers, extremely, extremely effective, guys. But the other thing that disturbed me a little bit is when it comes to the e-collar usage, there's still a lot of confusion and still a lot of people that aren't understanding it. But on the one positive note, there was one trainer that I met at this conference, great dude. He was very honest, and this is the kind of trainers we need. He said, I'm not using e-collars because I don't quite understand them very well. I'm confused, and I don't want to do harm to the dog. Can you ask for any better than that? No, that's someone that I want training my dog, someone that actually cares. So I said, you know what? Let's meet in the lobby and I'm going to help you. And so me, that trainer, and one other trainer met, and I started helping them and explaining. And I did the role playing like I do with my clients. You guys have seen a couple videos. Now, when I do it with the client holds the e-collar and I teach them all the timing and the mechanics. And we go through the whole process, right? Then when the client truly understands it, I hold the e-collar, I become the dog, and I make the client practice on me. This way, I can see how much they know and where all the mistakes are, but they make the mistakes on me, not the dog. That's really important. But with this trainer, I did something a little different. After he became the dog and held the e-collar, I did all the work and taught him. I didn't take the e-collar from him and allow him to practice on me. I gave it a few hours. After a few hours, I told him, meet me back in the lobby, let's do some more work. When we started, it was just me and him, and then a large crowd gathered because everybody wants more information. Everyone's hungry to learn more, and that's a beautiful thing. A lot of young trainers. Now, I took the e-collar, I became the dog, and I said, okay, go ahead and work me. Start in the conditioning phase and practice. And he had to really think about it. And he asked questions. I said, no, just do it. And he did, and it was completely wrong. It would have been totally unfair to the dog, even though, remember, still super low levels, not even to an annoyance level. That's very important to say. But he made mistake after mistake, and I stopped, and there was a reason behind that. I wanted this trainer to see, not only this trainer, but everyone there. A lot of times we complain about clients not complying and doing their homework and following through. But what I explain to them when that happens, it's usually because the clients don't understand and they don't get it. This isn't easy, guys. A lot of dog trainers don't get it. So imagine how hard it is for an everyday dog owner. So what I explained to him was, as a dog trainer, a couple hours later, you didn't remember how to do this. Now imagine how your client feels. And the light bulbs went off for everyone. It was very eye-opening. And I think it was very, very beneficial what we did. So after he made all the mistakes, then I corrected the mistakes and showed him how to do it. And that's how people learn, guys. And so for you dog trainers out there that work with clients and teach them, it takes a lot more time than you think, a lot more patience, and we have to break it down so simple that it's hard for them to fail. And even once we're there, we have to go even further and teach it over and over in the most simplest form. Because if they get it, they will do it. And it's going to make you look better because their dog's your advertisement. Okay? So these are some of the things that we went over. And so many great presenters and so many unbelievable dog trainers. And the amount of support that I got over this past week was completely overwhelming. Never expected to get the attention I did. And from the people that came from all over the world. And some of the things you said to me was really mind-blowing. Blew my mind. And so before the conference, I got to be honest with you, I was starting to reach that burnout mode again. And, you know, I put out so much stuff. And although most of the stuff I receive back is very positive, sometimes you get tired of the trolls and the haters out there. And it just, you know, you start thinking, why am I doing this? So for everyone that I met this past week, just know that you folks have pushed me to do a lot more, because I realize I'm not doing enough. So the whole conference, all the people that organized it, all the people that attended, you guys have lit a fire under my ass and motivated me more than ever. And for that, I can't thank you enough. I mean, I needed that. This was a great week. It really was. Just had a tremendous time and met so many incredible people. But these are some of the things I want you to think about, guys. That positive confusion, the marking and rewarding, the unwanted behavior, you know, all this stuff, the aggression, the fear. None of that involved punishment. None of it. I'm not anti-punishment, right? But good dog training requires very little punishment, very little corrections. And so stay away from the cancers that do nothing but promote that. The reason they promote it is they don't know any other way, and their whole goal is to market themselves and just put as many dogs as they can through their program to get the dollar. That's it. They're not dog trainers, they're marketers. Okay? We have to have compassion for the animal, and we have to use our tools properly. And if you find yourself working with someone or yourself constantly punishing dogs, you're doing something wrong, because it's unnecessary. We have to make this industry better, and that takes all of us, not just one big mouth like myself or a few others. We have to start putting more stuff out there and showing the general public. One last quick thing. When I did my presentation, I mentioned Dr. Ian Dunbar. He had made a negative comment on one of my videos several years back. It was an e-collar video, but it wasn't disrespectful or malicious. It was honest. It was an e-collar training video, and what Dr. Dunbar commented was, he said, in order to use an e-collar, you have to really be able to read the dog and have impeccable timing. And if you have both those, you don't need an e-collar. Now, that comment didn't upset me. It let the light bulb go off big time, because I realized at that moment, if an educated dog man like that thinks that's how I'm using e-collars and everyone else is using e-collars, well, then e-collar supporters, we're not doing enough to get the right information out of there. And that's why I started putting out so much e-collar stuff, especially first e-collar stuff. It was because of his comment. I never took it in a bad way. Like I said, it wasn't disrespectful. It wasn't malicious. He was being honest. So I'm grateful he made that comment, because it made me realize we have to do better about showing people how we use this tool. And I wrote an article a few years back, like, you know, I'm not that e-collar guy, because I didn't want to only be an e-collar guy. You know, it's a small part of what I do. But if I have to take that role to make it look more in a positive light like it is, I'll do whatever I have to do to help the industry. And I'm going to do all I can not to hurt the industry. And that's important. We have enough people doing that, okay? So I know this is long, guys, but to me, the information is very important, and we have to do better. We have to do better by the dog and by the general public. It's important. All right, folks? Peace.